The Most Dangerous Game, Middle School Version, based on the story by Richard Connell, Public Domain.
Part 1. The Mysterious Island. Rainsford and his friend Whitney were on a big yacht, sailing through the dark Caribbean Sea. The night was so black, it felt like a heavy blanket over everything.
"Somewhere over there on the right is a big island," Whitney said, looking into the darkness. "It's kind of a mystery. Sailors call it Ship Trap Island."
Ship Trap Island? Rainsford repeated. That sounds creepy. Why do they call it that?
"I don't really know," Whitney said. "Sailors are scared of it. They say it has an evil reputation. Even our crew was nervous today."
Rainsford laughed a little. You're being too superstitious. There are two kinds of people in the world, hunters and those who get hunted. We're lucky we're the hunters.
Whitney shook his head. "I'm not so sure it's that simple. Animals feel fear, at least fear of pain and fear of death." Rainsford didn't agree. To him, hunting was just a sport. After a while, Whitney went to bed, and Rainsford stayed on deck to smoke and enjoy the warm night. Everything was quiet, except for the steady hum of the yacht's engines and the soft swish of water. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence. Bang! Then again, bang! And a third time, bang!
That was a gun, Rainsford thought.
He jumped up and ran to the rail, trying to see where the shots came from, but the night was too dark. To get a better look, he climbed up on the rail. His pipe hit a rope and flew out of his mouth. He reached for it, lost his balance, and fell straight into the warm, dark sea.
The water slammed into his face. He came up choking and tried to yell, but the waves slapped into his mouth. He saw the yacht's lights moving away, farther and farther, until they looked like tiny fireflies, and then disappeared completely. He remembered the gunshots that came from the right, so he turned that way and started swimming, slowly and steadily to save his strength. After a long time, he heard a horrible sound, a high, terrified scream from an animal in great pain. Then another sharp gunshot. He swam toward the sounds. His muscles burned. He counted his strokes. Just when he thought he couldn't go on much longer, he heard something new, the roar of waves crashing against rocks. He was almost smashed against the rocks in the dark, but managed to grab a ledge and climb. His hands got scraped and raw, but he pulled himself up. Beyond the cliffs was thick jungle. Right then, all he cared about was getting away from the sea. At the edge of the trees, he collapsed and fell into the deepest sleep he'd ever had. Part 2. A Strange House and a Polite Host. When Rainsford woke up, the sun was already low. He was starving and thirsty, but he felt stronger after sleeping.
Where there are gunshots, there are people, he thought. And where there are people, there is food.
He walked along the shore until he found signs of a struggle in the jungle. Broken plants, crushed moss, and a patch stained red with blood. He also found a shiny, empty bullet shell.
"A small bullet, but a big animal," he muttered. "Whoever hunted it was brave or crazy." Nearby, he found footprints of hunting boots. He followed them until the sun began to set and darkness came again. Just when the jungle and sea were turning black, he saw lights ahead. At first he thought it must be a village, but as he got closer, he realized all the lights were coming from one enormous building. It looked like a giant old castle sitting on a cliff, with pointed towers reaching into the dark sky. He pushed open a heavy iron gate and climbed stone steps to a massive door with a creepy gargoyle face for a knocker. He lifted the knocker and let it fall. The loud boom echoed inside.
The door suddenly flew open. A giant man stood there, huge, with a long black beard and cold little eyes. He wore a black uniform and pointed a revolver straight at Rainsford's chest.
"Don't be afraid," Rainsford said quickly. "I'm not a robber. I fell off a yacht. My name is Sanger Rainsford from New York."
The giant didn't answer. He just stared, gun still pointed.
Then another man appeared at the top of the marble stairs.
He was tall, thin, and dressed in fancy evening clothes. He walked down calmly and held out his hand.
It is a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Sanger Rainsford, the famous hunter, to my home, he said in a clear, accented voice. I am General Zaroff.
Rainsford automatically shook his hand, surprised.
I've read your book about hunting snow leopards in Tibet, the general explained, smiling.
General Zaroff was older, with white hair, but his eyebrows and mustache were very black. His dark eyes were sharp and bright. His face looked like the face of a man used to giving orders.
He turned to the giant. Ivan, put away your gun. This is our guest. Then to Rainsford he added, Ivan is a Cossack, strong, but unfortunately he is deaf and cannot speak.
Zaroff invited Rainsford in, gave him dry clothes and a room with a huge bed. After Rainsford cleaned up, Ivan led him to the dining hall.
It was a huge, old-style room with wooden panels and a very long table. On the walls were mounted heads of lions, tigers, elephants, moose, and bears, huge and perfect trophies. Rainsford, who had hunted all over the world, was impressed. They ate a rich soup and a fancy meal with excellent drinks and expensive dishes. Rainsford began to relax.
Still, Rainsford sometimes noticed Zaroff staring at him carefully, studying him.
I see you admire my trophies, the general said. Hunting is my one passion.
You're an amazing hunter, Rainsford said. That Cape buffalo head is the biggest I've ever seen.
Yes, he almost killed me, Zaroff said casually. Threw me against a tree and broke my skull. But I got him in the end.
Rainsford said he thought the Cape buffalo was the most dangerous animal to hunt.
Zaroff smiled a strange smile. No, you are mistaken. There is an animal more dangerous, the most dangerous game in the world. And I hunt it here, on this island.
Part 3. The Terrible Secret. The conversation continued after dinner. Zaroff explained his past. He was born rich in Russia, loved hunting from age 5, hunted all over the world. Bears, tigers, rhinos, crocodiles, jaguars. But after years of success, hunting became too easy and boring for him.
No animal could escape me, he said. I was always better. Animals have only their legs and instinct. I have a gun and a human brain. Instinct cannot match reason. He paused, then continued. So I asked myself, what would be the perfect animal to hunt? It must be brave. It must be clever. Most of all, it must be able to think. But no animal can think like that, Rainsford said.
Zaroff slowly smiled. My dear fellow,
There is one.
Rainsford stared. You can't mean humans.
Why not? Zaroff asked calmly.
Because that's not hunting, Rainsford said angrily. That's murder.
Zaroff didn't even look offended. He laughed lightly. You are very old-fashioned, Mr. Rainsford. Life is for the strong, to be lived by the strong. The weak exist to give the strong pleasure. Many men think this, but don't admit it. I am simply honest.
Rainsford felt sick. But Zaroff went on, as if he were explaining a hobby. He told Rainsford that sometimes ships crashed on the sharp rocks around the island, or were tricked into coming too close. The survivors ended up on his island. He fed them, rested them, and then hunted them.
I give them a choice, Zaroff said. They can be hunted by me, or they can work for my servant Ivan. Those who refuse to play my game usually end up wishing they hadn't.
Rainsford was horrified. I'm a hunter, not a killer. I will never join you.
Zarov's voice stayed smooth, but his eyes hardened. I'm sorry you feel that way, but you will still be involved in the game, only as the other side.
Rainsford went cold. You mean you're going to hunt me?
Exactly, said Zarov. It will be thrilling. You are an expert hunter. You will be a wonderful challenge. He laid out the rules. Rainsford would get a head start into the jungle. Zarov would follow, trying to track him down.
If Rainsford survived 3 full days, he would win and be returned to the mainland. If Zarov found him, Rainsford would die.
Of course, Zarov added smoothly, you must promise never to tell anyone about my island if you survive.
I won't agree to that, Rainsford said.
The general shrugged. We can discuss that in 3 days, if you are still alive. He rang a bell. Ivan will give you food, clothes, and a knife. I advise you to wear moccasins so your tracks are harder to see, and you might want to avoid the big swamp in the southeast, Death Swamp. The quicksand there is very dangerous. He smiled. I will start the hunt at sunset. Night hunting is more exciting. Good luck, Mr. Rainsford.
Part 4. Being the Prey. As soon as Rainsford left the house, he felt panic rising in his chest. He forced himself to breathe deeply.
I must keep my nerve, he told himself. If I panic, I'm dead.
At first he just ran, pushing through branches and vines, wanting to get as far as possible from the house. But then he stopped. The island was surrounded by water. He couldn't just run in a straight line forever.
I have to think like a hunter, he realized. I'll give him a confusing trail. So he walked in loops and curves, crossing his own path many times, trying to leave the most tangled, confusing trail he could. Finally, exhausted and scratched by branches, he climbed high into a big tree and lay along a wide branch, hidden in the leaves. Even Zarov can't track me here in the dark, he told himself. No one could. The night dragged by slowly. Rainsford couldn't sleep. Every sound made him tense up.
Early in the gray morning, he heard leaves rustling nearby. Something was moving through the jungle, slowly and carefully, following his path.
He held his breath and peered down. It was General Zarov. Zarov's eyes were fixed on the ground, reading the trail like a book. When he got almost under the tree where Rainsford was hiding, he stopped. He studied the ground, frowned, then lit one of his black cigarettes.
Rainsford's muscles were tight. He considered jumping down on the general, but he noticed the gun in Zarov's hand.
Slowly, the general's eyes began to move upward, toward the tree, inch by inch. Rainsford felt his heart hammering. The eyes reached the level just below Rainsford's branch, then stopped. Zarov smiled slightly, blew a ring of smoke into the air, turned and walked away, whistling softly. Only after the sounds faded did Rainsford finally let out the breath he was holding. Then he understood. Zarov had known he was there. He had chosen not to catch him yet. He was playing with him, like a cat plays with a mouse. Rainsford shivered. I will not lose my nerve, he whispered. I won't.
He climbed down and moved on, thinking furiously. He needed more than just running and hiding.
Soon he found 2 trees, one dead and leaning against a younger one. He remembered a trap he'd learned about called a Malay man-catcher. He used his knife to cut and balance the heavy dead tree so that if someone stepped on a certain trigger branch, the tree would fall like a giant hammer.
He set the trap and hid behind a log. After a while, he heard footsteps. Zarov was coming, carefully but confidently. The general stepped near the trigger branch. His foot touched it, and in an instant he jumped backward with amazing speed, just as the heavy tree crashed down.
It still hit his shoulder and knocked him sideways. He winched and rubbed his arm, then laughed loudly.
"Very good, Mr. Rainsford," he called out. "Not many men know how to make a Malay man-catcher. You are interesting fray. I am going back to take care of my shoulder, but I'll return. I shall be back."
Rainsford didn't feel like he'd won anything. He moved on, deeper into the jungle. Evening turned into night again. The ground grew softer and wetter beneath his feet. The plants grew thicker. Mosquitoes and other bugs bit him constantly.
Suddenly, his foot sank into something soft, sticky, and sucking. Quicksand!
He yanked his foot out just in time. Death Swamp, he realized. But then he had an idea. He moved back from the quicksand and started digging as fast as he could. He dug a deep, narrow pit. Then he sharpened wooden stakes and fixed them pointing up from the bottom like deadly teeth.
He covered the pit with branches and leaves so it looked like ordinary ground. Tired and soaked with sweat, he hid behind a burned-out tree stump and waited. He soon heard the baying of hounds in the distance and the crunch of footsteps nearby. The sounds grew louder. Then, crack! The covering branches snapped. A loud yelp of pain came from the pit.
Rainsford jumped up, hopeful. But then a calm voice called out, "Well done, Mr. Rainsford. You have made a fine Burmese tiger pit, but sadly, it only got one of my best dogs."
Zaroff's flashlight shone through the darkness. Rainsford could see the general standing 3 feet away from the pit, alive and well.
"I think next time we will see how you do against my entire pack," Zaroff said. "Thank you for the entertaining evening."
Rainsford's heart sank. His trap had only killed a dog, not the hunter. At dawn, the sound of the dogs was closer. The entire pack was coming now, led by Zaroff and Ivan. Rainsford knew if he stayed where he was, he'd be caught. If he ran, he'd probably be caught later. He needed something desperate and clever.
He climbed a tree and saw them. Ivan, struggling to hold back the excited hounds, and behind him, General Zaroff, moving calmly, smiling. Rainsford climbed down and quickly tied his hunting knife to a young, springy tree. He bent the tree back, pointing the knife along the trail, and tied it in place with a vine. If someone walked into it and the vine snapped, he finished just as the dog's barking grew louder. Then he ran as fast as he could.
A moment later, the barking stopped suddenly. There was a shout, then silence.
Rainsford scrambled up another tree and looked back. Zaroff was still standing, but Ivan was down. The knife trap had done its work. The dogs then found Rainsford's new trail, and the chase began again, louder and closer than ever.
"Nerve! Nerve! Nerve!" he panted, forcing himself to keep going. Part 5. The Final Confrontation. At last, the trees thinned, and Rainsford saw a blue gap ahead. He ran toward it and reached the edge of a cliff. Below, waves crashed against the rocks. Across a small cove, he could see the gray stone chateau on its cliff. The barking was very close behind him. If he stayed, the dogs and Zaroff would reach him in seconds.
He looked down at the sea. The drop was high. The water churned. It was a huge risk.
He didn't think again. He jumped. The water swallowed him, and the sea took him away. Later, Zaroff and his pack reached the cliff. The general looked out over the water for a while, shrugged, and decided that Rainsford must have died in the fall. Slightly annoyed, but also impressed, he went back home.
That night, he had a fancy dinner, drank good wine,
and read a book in his library. Only two things bothered him.
Ivan was dead and would be hard to replace. Rainsford, a truly interesting opponent, had escaped the proper ending to the game by jumping into the sea instead of being caught.
At about 10 o'clock, the general went to bed, tired but satisfied. He locked his bedroom door, walked to the window, and looked down at the courtyard where the dogs lay.
"Better luck next time," he called to them. Then he turned on the light.
Someone was standing in his bedroom, half hidden by the curtains of his bed.
"Rainsford," Zaroff shouted. "How did you get here?"
"I swam," Rainsford said quietly. "It was faster than walking through the jungle."
For the first time, Zaroff seemed truly surprised. Then he smiled. "I congratulate you," he said. "You have won the game."
Rainsford's face was hard. "I am still an animal at bay," he said in a low voice. "Cornered and dangerous. Get ready, General Zaroff."
The general gave a small bow. "Very well. One of us will provide dinner for the dogs. The other will sleep in this excellent bed. On guard, Mr. Rainsford."
We are not told exactly what happened in that fight, but the last line of the story tells us this. That night, Rainsford had never slept in a better bed.